What is going on, ballers? It's your boy MJ and Joe coming at you with another episode of the Fantasy Fumble. It is a brand new year. It's 2026. I know you guys are as happy as I am because it feels like another great year of fantasy championships. This is my favorite time of the year, Joe. What about yourself?
I completely agree. Like you said on a group text a few days ago, the first day of the season is like Christmas morning. That's exactly how I feel. This is my favorite time of year, regardless of football, but football is the icing on the cake. So I'm here for it.
But what we're going to do, guys, instead of starting from number 25, working our way up, that's just a tease. We want to give you guys a full course. So we're going to go ahead and start off from number one and work our way down. That's where you start to see the changes in draft orders. Everyone has their 1A, 1B, right? But it's those guys after that really make the difference in your draft strategy.
Yeah, and I understand tiers and how so many players are interchangeable that tiers make sense. I totally get that, but we like to put a number on each player. So my number one is Jahmyr Gibbs. He's a proven monster. Montgomery is gone, so Gibbs is going to get more goal line work. And I don't see Isaiah Pacheco impeding very much at all on his production. And Detroit has one of the best offenses in the NFL. So to me, it's a pretty obvious number one with Jahmyr Gibbs.
Oh, yeah. And Joe, I know we're not supposed to comment on each other's players, but I mean, I have Gibbs at number one as well. I mean, it's easy to see why. I know people are debating between him and Bijan, and honestly, I did a little bit more extensive research, and it turns out that Jahmyr Gibbs actually has running back position's weakest strength of schedule. That means that out of all the running backs in the NFL, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have the most fantasy-friendly running back matchups for the season. And paired to that, the fact that he is the number one option now with no Montgomery taking goal line work. I mean, the guy just got paid. He was the highest paid running back in the offseason. I mean, expect it. And they already talk about it in training camp. I mean, Dan Campbell's talking about they're going to really open up and let Jahmyr Gibbs really do his thing. So, I mean, I don't even think it's going to be close this year. I think he's going to go over 400 fantasy points. And the next nearest guy is going to be at 350. That's how much of how good of a season I think he's going to have. Because last year he had 18 touchdowns. He averaged 20 touches per game. So can you imagine him getting 30 carries a game? I can.
I can too. And I'm glad you said that because there is so much discussion about 1 and 2 with Bijan and Gibbs. And I love Bijan, don't get me wrong, but I feel like there's just more pieces of the puzzle that are put together for Jahmyr Gibbs with that offense and Montgomery being gone. Because Pacheco's a different player than Montgomery anyway. And we'll get into Bijan in a minute, but I am a lot higher on Gibbs too. So I'm glad you said that.
Oh, yeah. Now for number two, I'll go ahead and lead us off because it's going to be the same guy. You know, we have Bijan Robinson. You know, there's a handful of guys that I consider like an S tier type of player. And S, I mean superstar, right? So these are guys that are going to come in. They're going to give you over 20 points a game. They're going to have number one shares of their offense, you know, and they're going to be somebody that keeps going, and that's going to be Bijan. Again, speaking about records, the reason why I also have him below Gibbs is because he actually has the 15th hardest strength of schedule, which is not bad, right? It's not going to stop him from producing. However, when you look at his back half of the season, weeks 10 through 18, he actually has a 28th hardest, he has a 20. He has the 6th hardest matchup because it's going by number 28. So basically, the higher the number, the harder the matchup. So I fade him a little bit, expect him to be strong up front, and maybe second half of the season slow down. So he's a good prime opportunity to trade him off for something big.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I actually didn't realize that about the schedule. I knew Detroit had a nice schedule, but I didn't realize for Atlanta. But, you know, they are just not on the same level as Detroit as a team. So you got to take that into consideration with every player. And Algier's gone, which is great for Bijan because I think Algier was eating into his goal line work more than Brian Robinson will. And it's kind of like with Pacheco and Gibbs. I feel like Montgomery is a much different player, and had a much bigger impact than Pacheco will. I feel the same way about Algier. I think he had a bigger impact in Atlanta than Brian Robinson will. And despite him joining the team, I don't think it's going to affect Bijan very much. And the Falcons' offensive line has improved, which is great because we saw what Bijan did last year. Just basically expect more of the same. I feel like it's going to be a very similar season.
Yeah, the only thing that worries me is Atlanta sticking to it full time, right? They have a new offensive coordinator, don't they, over there? So, new head coach in
Yeah.
Atlanta. So, hopefully change some things up. But because the last few years, I have not been happy with the coaching staff. They haven't been giving Bijan enough carries, and they've always split it with Algier. So, hopefully, this is a season where they get their shit together.
Well, and that's the thing is they've said that a few years in a row now that they're going to change things up. They're going to do things differently. We did see that last year, but it wasn't enough. So I want to see them just put the pedal to the metal with Bijan. Just give him the full workload. I mean, it was enough from a football perspective, but from a fantasy perspective, I mean, Algier was just driving me crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Who do you have at number 3?
Number 3? Okay. All right. So number 3 here, I went and bumped up Jonathan Taylor to number 3 spot. I like him. I mean, last year he had an amazing season, 20 overall touchdowns. I mean, the guy averaged 23 touches a game, 22 points per game, and he had over 1,500 rushing yards, right? And almost 2,000 all-purpose yards. So the guy's – I mean, he's a workhorse. He was probably like RB1 for the first 12 weeks, 14 weeks of the season, right? Until Daniel Jones got injured. So, Daniel Jones is healthy. That's a really good offensive coordinator over there. So I could see that Jonathan Taylor repeating some of that success from last year.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Now, my number 3, I actually don't know. I have no idea how you feel about this guy, but I mean, overall, I have Christian McCaffrey. And last year, the 49ers offense, it didn't just revolve around McCaffrey. He was basically the entire offense. And I like Mike Evans and Christian Kirk being added to the team, but the offense will still run through McCaffrey. We know that. And I understand that he's a risky draft pick. Every year he's a risky draft pick since his, injury history has gotten worse. But I had my reservations last year and he won me a championship. So if things go well, even if he takes a much smaller workload, because he had an insane workload last year. So even if they ramp down his production, I feel like he could still finish as the RB1.
Yeah. He had an amazing season for sure. Who's your number 4?
My number 4 is Jonathan Taylor for all the reasons you mentioned. He has affected my rational thought process over the years because I had him 2 seasons when he was dealing with injury and it drove me crazy. And of course, I didn't have him last year when he finished inside the top 5. So yeah. I faded him last year because he was frustrating to have in previous seasons, but he's an absolute beast. Like you said, his yardage last year was off the charts, and history has shown he could easily finish as a top 3 running back. And not much has changed for the Colts. We've got a healthy team, and I think he's going to come out swinging just like he did last year. And as long as everyone stays healthy, finish strong through the end of the season.
All right. For my number 4, I actually have James Cook at number 4. I like Cook. Last year, he had a lot of uncertainties, right? Not having a contract, so he got drafted a little bit later than people originally hoped that he would be. He was going like the 4th or 5th round, and man, he ended up finishing as a top 5 RB last year. The guy had over 1,600 rushing yards. He had over 300 carries. He only had 33 receptions, and yet he was able to turn those 33 receptions into 300 yards and overall 14 touchdowns. So, for a guy who's getting vultured by Josh Allen at the goal line, I mean, he had a really productive fantasy season.
Absolutely. Agree with every word of that. And I actually had him as my number 4 before I made some adjustments to my rankings, but I totally agree with that. I have him pretty high too. Now, for my number 5, This is going to surprise you, but not surprise you at the same time because I love this dude. I have Chase Brown. That's high, I understand, but look at his numbers over the second half of the season, and you can at least understand why I have him in my top 5. He's had double-digit touchdowns in the last 2 seasons, and they have a very easy schedule. A healthy Joe Burrow and his involvement in the passing game. So I'm just very confident with all those pieces of the puzzle coming together. And I feel like he was seriously limited at the beginning of last year because of Joe Burrow. And, we saw the same thing with Jamar Chase. The second half of the season, they both finished strong. They looked awesome. And if we can get that for a full season, I see him as a top 5 running back.
Okay, you were right. It was going to surprise me.
Yeah, but I love Chase Brown.
You've been about him for the last few years.
It. Yeah, and I really do. I really do think he has the potential. And if you look at the Bengals schedule, it's very nice.
Yeah, for sure. Now, my number 5, you already talked about the guy, but I have CMC there. I still consider him an S tier running back, superstar running back. He's somebody that, is going to get his touches, right, no matter what. Because last year he actually led the league in touches. He actually touched the ball 25.8 times a game. So, and how many running backs do you see over 100 receptions on a season?
I know, dude. That's the thing is his receiving game is out of control too.
Bro, he had 102 receptions last year, 924 receiving yards. He had 300 carries for 1,200 yards. Like, the guy is an absolute maniac. Like, he was close to having a 1,000 season, which doesn't happen often. But, given the fact that Shanahan's the running RB breaker, that's the only reason why I have him faded a little bit farther back this year.
And I totally get that. But I think if they do it right and they don't just, although I said this last year too, I was a little worried they were going to run him into the ground. But if they do it right, he can have another running back 1 season.
Yeah.
Now for number 6, I'm going to touch on a guy that you just mentioned. That's James Cook. He's a pure talent on one of the best offenses in the league. And like you said, despite Josh Allen vulturing those the goal line work, he's still put up double-digit touchdowns and looked incredible in pretty much every game. Just a reliable RB1 that will give you steady numbers throughout the season. Even his bad games really weren't that bad last year. So he might not give you 25, 30 points, but he'll give you a consistent 15 to 20 nearly every game. And he will have those ceilings where he's giving you 25 and 30 too.
Oh, yeah. That was your number 6, huh?
Yeah, who's your number 6?
My number 6. So this is actually going to finish up the last of my S tier running backs, so superstar tier running backs. That doesn't mean to say that any of the other running backs coming after this aren't superstars. I just feel for fantasy perspective, it has to be separated so people understand that, hey, when these guys fall to you, you pick them up, right? You have to have a priority list, but these are the guys that you're going to grab are going to give you 20 points a game every year. Or every game. And so my last guy I have is Devin Achane. So a lot of people are like scared of Miami this year because obviously they're a terrible offense. They pretty much released everybody and they're starting from scratch. All good reasons to stay away from them. However, when it comes to running back schedules, he actually has the 3rd easiest schedule for the season. And for the fantasy playoffs too, he's run of the mill. He's in the 15th percentile, so basically middle of the pack is going to be his running back schedule. But the guy last year was touching the ball 19 times a game, and he still, with only 230 carries, he was over 1,350 rushing yards. So the guy gets a lot of work. Malik Willis is going to make him better. Over Tua. So I could see him staying in that elite 20-point per game status.
I totally agree with that, and that works perfectly, just rolling right into my number 7, who is Devon Achane. All the reasons you mentioned. I was actually pretty high on him last year, and he still impressed me. It's just crazy what an athlete he is. Could easily be in the top 5, absolutely. And I used to be a little bit worried about his size and injury history, but he's proven to be super tough and durable. I mean, he put those concerns to bed last season, and the offense will run through him. I like Malik a lot too, opposed to Tua. And the offense as a whole, I actually didn't realize how good the schedule was, but the offense as a whole is the only reason I really do have him outside of my top 5. If they had, more scoring opportunities and just a better team overall, he'd probably be in my top 5. But he's an extremely talented player, and he has a very high ceiling.
Mm. So my number 7, I actually have Ashton Genty. So he's somebody that I would consider, on a bad offense, right? Like, I mean, they just signed, drafted for Fernando Mendoza. They got a couple players added there, but nobody that's really going to like make that team that much better. But what they did do is they got a better offensive coordinator and they're beefed up their O line. So this guy last year, he only averaged 15 points a game, but even with that, he was getting 20 touches a game. So for a guy to get 20 touches, and he had over 300 touches for the year, so 266 rush attempts and 55 receptions in total. So the guy is getting all the work. I mean, he had. I can expect him to get even more touches this year and be even more productive because and he's somebody that you start off hot in the beginning, and his schedule gets hard in the second half of the season. So you kind of sell high on him middle of the season.
I have my concerns about Genty, but what you said is true as well. Who do you have for number 8?
Number 8, I actually have my buddy here, Saquon Barkley. I mean, the guy has a super case schedule. I mean, Eagles have the seventh easiest schedule this year. It does get harder near the fantasy playoffs. So he's somebody that, I may fade later on in the year, but just having a whole new offensive coordinator and Sean Mannion, I mean, the guy is able to actually like run, motion offenses and try to do misdirection. So you can expect the Eagles offense to take a step up from last year. It may not be on the Super Bowl level that we were a couple of years ago for that particular skill set, but, expect us to be a lot better this year. So, I see Saquon getting back to that elite RB1 status and getting you those 20 points a game again.
Man, I'm happy to hear that because my number 8 is Saquon Barkley. Despite some struggles last year, I still love Barkley. New offensive coordinator, as you mentioned, more runs under center, and a healthy offensive line. It could launch Barkley back into that elite status that we remember. And he was still good last year. I like Tank as a player, but Barkley's the lead back, and they're going to shake some things up, and the offense will run through him for sure. And I do like the changes they made on offense, and I expect big things from the Eagles.
Sure. And who's your number 9?
Number 9, I have Amarian Hampton. There's been a lot of buzz about him lately, and I'm here for it, man. I actually wasn't that high on him until I started listening to other people talk about him. And I know you are high on him. So I was listening to what you said last year too. And if you look at the back half of the season, he looked great with his limited touches. So Mike McDaniel said Vidal and Mitchell will be heavily involved in the offense, but I doubt that's going to be the case once the season gets rolling and we see what Hampton can do. And as a bell cow back, I think he has a clear path to the top 10. That's why I have him at number 9.
It's funny because he's actually exactly my number 9 as well.
Nice.
So obviously one thing I like about him this year is his schedule isn't necessarily the easiest or the hardest, but it's going to be very steady. Like it's going to have some hard games, some easy games kind of mixed in the beginning and the end. So he's a good player to have, but I mean, just the fact that he only had 124 touches last year, maybe 150 if you count receptions. So the guy didn't get a lot of work. He was injured for like 10 weeks of the season. I know because I had him on my bench most of the season. So he's somebody that's going to come in, and even with limited touches, he was producing as he was. So I can't imagine him in a Mike McDaniel's offense under the Devin Achane role. I actually think he's going to be better than Achane because he has a better skill set than Achane. He's bigger, he's stronger hands. may not be faster, but hey, I rather have that a little bit of that size with my running backs as well.
Yeah, I prefer that too. It just feels a little safer, even with his injury history. Now at number 10, I have Derrick Henry as a proven workhorse on a solid offense. He's been putting everyone in their place that's questioning his ability once he hit 30 years old. And he's now 32. Hasn't really shown any signs of slowing down. I mean, last year a little bit, but you have to remember he was still really solid. And that was a struggling offense with Lamar Jackson being banged up for most of the season. Even when he was playing, he was banged up. So with a healthy team and most people believing they're going to win the division, I think Henry should have another really solid year. Because even though last year was like a step back, he was still awesome. So expect him to be inside the top 10.
Oh, yeah. Big Henry fan. But actually, my number 10 is a little bit different. He cracked my top 10 this year. He's somebody that I haven't thought it would crack my top 10 since his rookie year. But Mr. Kenneth Walker, the newest Kansas City Chief here, I mean, the guy has a great schedule matchup. Like, they always give the Chiefs, these layup games. He has the ninth easiest strength of schedule for the back half of the season. So, I mean, you're looking at somebody that was limited touches last year. He only was averaging 15 touches per game. And now he's going to be in an offense where he's going to get over 300 carries for the season, right? Because, I mean, you look behind him, who's going to be his backup, right? Like, there's nobody there, So as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be that bell cow. And if I know anything about Andy Reid offenses, is Kareem Hunt got a lot of damn touchdowns for being somebody that you don't
I know, man.
pick up.
That running back room has been very interesting the last few years.
Yeah, so I expect that to continue, but Kenneth Walker will be that dude.
Okay. So that rounds out our top 10. And now getting into number 11. This one might surprise you. I have no idea how you feel about this guy, but I have Jeremiah Love. And I understand a lot of people think that the Cardinals should have drafted someone to improve their defense, but they drafted Jeremiah Love. So there's got to be a reason for that. Their run game is in disarray without James Conner, who always misses a handful of games every season. And they drafted Love after signing Tyler Algier. So I think their intention is to make Love their featured back rather than having those three work as a committee. I think it might take a few weeks to get him to that role, but I don't think it's going to be like half the season. I think they're going to do it within the first month. And I think he's going to get that volume and then kind of have Connor and Algier as, keeping those guys healthy to work as a change of pace back rather than them working as a committee. I mean, their offensive line isn't great, but there are weapons on the offense that should create plenty of opportunities for Love. And again, I just don't think that Connor and Algier are going to be working as a committee. I think they're just going to be change of pace, and they probably want them healthy throughout the whole season.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I can see that either way. But for my number 11, I do have Derrick Henry. You already talked about him. He's been one of the most consistent running backs in the league for the last decade. I mean, last year I traded him early on in the season thinking he was going to hit a slump, and he proved me wrong. He was averaging 20 touches a game. I mean, the guy had over 1,600 yards, 300 carries for the season, 16 touchdowns. So he was just King Henry all over again. So I apologize for doubting you, sir. Never again, my king.
He did take a minute to heat up, but it could possibly be even better. For my number 12, I have Ashton Genty. He's a total beast. He's supposed to be more involved in the passing game. And the thing that knocks him outside of my top 10 is he's on the Raiders, who finished dead last as an offense last year. And I don't see a lot changing for their offense this year. They've got quarterback issues. They just like last year. And that's obviously going to impact Genty's production. If he was on a solid offense, he could even be in the top 5. But he's on the worst offense in the NFL, and it will limit his scoring opportunities, which means he will have to rely on massive volume, which he will get. But again, those scoring opportunities could be slim since he's on the Raiders. So he's at 12 for me.
My number 12, I actually have your buddy Chase Brown. I know you're really high on him. The thing that worries me about Chase Brown is obviously he's on the Bengals, right? Like that didn't uh, cause any problems last year. And what's going to happen is that his schedule's the ninth easiest for the first 9 weeks. So he's going to come out. He's going to look great. My concern is that back half, right? So weeks 10 through 18, he has the hardest schedule for running backs to finish off the season. And considering the fact that Joe Burrow hasn't necessarily been the healthiest quarterback, I just think it limits Chase Brown's ability to be the best he can be. So considering that schedule getting harder is the only reason why I have him this far back.
That is true, but one thing I want to say is last year I noticed his schedule was very difficult, and for one of my leagues I traded him away, and I kept looking at that schedule thinking, how is he putting up these numbers with this tough schedule? And I held on to him in a couple leagues, but I traded him in one league, and I regretted that because even with the difficult schedule last year, he came out swinging the second half. Now at number 13, I have Kenneth Walker. Him going to the Chiefs is very interesting because, as you mentioned, their running back room has just been really strange, and I really don't know what to expect, just to be straight up. But he showed up big time last year when it mattered most, and he was sharing the backfield with Charbonnet the entire season. So he is the bell cow back in Kansas City, clearly, and he's battled some injuries over the year. But if he can stay healthy and get a nice workload on that offense, I mean, he's going to put up numbers. There's no doubt. So I'm still not exactly sure what to expect, but I like this move for him. I like him being the RB1 in a team that really needs an RB1. I think they're going to fully utilize him, and he's going to put up better numbers than he did last year.
Okay. Yeah, for my number 13, I actually have Mr. Josh Jacobs. I faded him more than I probably did in the last couple of years because obviously last year he missed a few games. I actually thought he was out for the season when he first got hurt. I was worried, but luckily it wasn't that kind of injury. This year he has something working to his advantage is that his strength of schedules in the middle for the first half and the second half. So I think he's going to be somebody that's going to be very steady. And also that's also considering Green Bay has like no running back room right now. So there's no one there that I could see taking any snaps away from him. So you're going to see another year of Josh Jacobs kind of being a bell cow. And last year he was only touching the ball 17 times a game. So if they bump that up to 20 to 25, like some of these other top guys, and we're looking at a rejuvenated Josh Jacobs.
I have a couple other things I want to mention about Jacobs, but I'll get to him soon. For 14, I have Javonte Williams. Over the years, I've learned my lesson doubting Javonte, so he had to be inside my top 15 this year. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see him finish inside of the top 10 either. We remember how he started last year. He came out swinging, and he's on one of the best offenses in the NFL. So he's the clear-cut running back, one in Dallas with virtually no competition. And regardless of what you hear from some people about Jaden Blue, he's struggling right now to find his stride in the NFL, and Javonte is the guy in Dallas. So I have him. He looked great last year, and I have him as my number 14.
Okay. Now for my number 14, I actually have Jeremiah Love. Obviously, I know you're very high on him this year. I do think he's going to eventually be the starting running back for the rest of the season. Do I know when that's going to happen? Not really. Arizona's not really a team, with a lot of consistency. They have a brand new head coach, brand new offensive coordinator. They're going to be checking some things out. They have multiple talented running backs on the roster. And obviously we know James Conner's the guy on the way out, but maybe they just try to run him into the ground. Who knows? Regardless, I'm not necessarily someone that's going to be putting him where he's drafted typically because I see his ADPs typically in that top 10. I just can't justify paying that for a player that I don't think is going to be that guy all year long.
Yeah, rookies have given me a hard lesson many times over the years, and that is a possibility. I just feel like Arizona was very clear with their intentions when they drafted him. That's why I have him higher. But who do you have at 15?
For my number 15 running back, I actually have your buddy Javante Williams. So just a couple spots back, uh, I I like his role in Dallas. Right, there's no one that's going to take snaps away from him. Dallas is a historically high scoring offense. Right, they like to run up scores. If Javante's having a good game, they're going to keep feeding him. Right, so he ended up being solid at 15 points per game last year. He had over 1,200 rushing yards, over 13 touchdowns. I could see him replicating those numbers because those aren't like super gaudy or anything like that. They're very respectable numbers. So if he's your second best running back on your team, I think you have a really good starting lineup.
Oh, yeah, that'd be a great RB2. For my number 15, I have Kyron Williams. And he's kind of in a similar situation as Javante. He's been a solid producer over the years and is on one of the best offenses in the league. There's going to be plenty of scoring opportunities, and the only reason he's not a little higher on my list is because of Puka and Devontae. They're going to be so heavily involved in the offense that they're going to take some of that goal line work away. We know that Devontae is a huge target in the red zone. Puka is going to be scoring touchdowns too. But with that said, Kyron's a great running back. He's proven himself when people were doubting him. He proved that he is the RB1. He's the guy there. And I expect more of the same. At number 16, I have Breece Hall. I think Breece and the Jets as a whole will have a better season with Geno Smith, but I'm not saying it's going to be a good season. They should have more wins than last year, but I mean, they're not going to be a good team. Breece finished last year with only 4 touchdowns, and even with that number doubling, let's say he gets 8, and he has a more productive season, he's still not like high enough to be an RB1. I think he's a reliable RB2.
Yeah, and I can segue just because he's also my number 16. Brees Hall, I mean, historically terrible offense with the Jets, right? Whole new plan coming in this year, new quarterback, new everything. It's just, unfortunately, he's going to get the touches, but last year, I mean, he faced a lot of stacked boxes and then he was limited to 17 touches a game. So a team that can't keep the ball in the air and convert on first down is not really a running back friendly team. So I may not be as high on Brees Hall as some of the other guys out there, but if he's my second best running back, I'm not complaining, right? He's a guy that's going to give you 15 points a game, and if he gives you anything more than that, it's a blessing.
That's the truth. Now, at number 17, I have Cam Scatterbo. He seems healthy and hungry for the 2026 season. He was a total beast last year until he was injured, and so much fun to watch on top of that. I expect him to come out into the season with something to prove. People will criticize his play style, but his play style wasn't the reason he got injured last year. It was a twisted ankle, not a concussion or a neck injury or something like that. And in only 8 games, he had 7 touchdowns, over 400 rushing yards, and over 200 receiving yards. I mean, that's solid production for a guy that was relatively unknown. So I expect him to come out swinging, hit the ground running, and do more of what we saw over those 8 games.
Yeah. My number 17 is actually Kyron Williams. You already talked about him. But Kyron, I like the fact that he has a really good schedule, like first half of the season. He has the third easiest schedule for running backs. It gets a little bit harder second half, but obviously the Rams get better second half of the year too. So last year he was averaging 18.4 touches per game, and he still managed to give you a respectable 16 points per game and 13 touchdowns. So a guy that was splitting a lot of snaps, I think, with Blake Corum. You're going to see a little bit of that this year as well. But I also think he's somebody that's highly efficient with his touches. So whether you're playing him as your second or third best guy, I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be a solid production no matter what.
Who's your number 18?
My number 18, I actually have Cam Scatterbo. So, you already talked about him. He was super productive in the short amount of time he was there. The moment he took over, he already had a couple multiple touchdown games last year. The guy had 7 touchdowns, and that is almost as many games. Yeah. So he's very productive. He was averaging 20 touches per game, and I mean, going into this year, John Harbaugh is a coach. I mean, he likes to run the
Yep.
ball. He's historically had good running backs all throughout. Even no-name running backs would be pretty good in that offense. So, give him a Scatabo who's healthy. It's going to be and they also signed a fullback from the Ravens as well, Patrick
Yeah, I
Ricard.
heard that just today, actually.
Yeah, so he's going to be mauling it. So you're going to see a lot of I formation, a lot of old school running over here in New York this
And
year.
that's his style. I love that. Now, at 18, I have Bucky Irving. I feel like Bucky's being overlooked right now. He was injured most of 2025, but now he's healthy, and he is clearly the RB1 on an exciting offense. He was averaging almost 20 fantasy points per game before he got injured. And I know it took him a long time to come back. And for some reason, even when he did come back, his opportunities were limited. I don't feel like we got to see what he could do on the back half of the season. So if he can replicate what he did in the first half of the season and hit the ground running like that and stay healthy, I feel like he has no problem staying inside the top 20. And that's why I got him at 18.
All right. What about your number 19?
19, I have Josh Jacobs. Everything you mentioned is true. I mean, last year was a little up and down for him. And I've heard some recent chatter that the Packers haven't discussed or prepared for a potential suspension of Josh Jacobs because, like you said, they're not getting anybody else into that running back room. But I think he's getting suspended. I don't know how long, but it seems like the NFL feels more obligated to take action these days. And off-field drama can impact a player too. And these allegations are pretty bad. So regardless of what happens with Jacobs, he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. And I would obviously have him much higher if this shit wasn't lingering over his head. He scored 14 touchdowns last year, which was, a big bulk of his production. He should continue to get a heavy workload at the goal line, and he could sneak into the top 10, but given the circumstances, he's barely inside my top 20 at number 19.
Yeah, and I haven't looked too deep into those suspension allegations so that could be something to monitor, right? He could be somebody that probably fades, given once we get more evidence, more information, kind of like what's happening with Rashid Rice,
exactly,
or is happening with him. So we'll see. Now, for my number 19, I actually have Travis Etienne. I mean, New Orleans went in the offseason, they went out and got him. I mean, and the guy was super efficient last year. He was getting 18 touches a game over there. Jacksonville had, a great season, over 1,000 rushing yards, over 13 touchdowns, 15 points per game. So the guy was great. Now he's in an offense with that I think he would be more utilized to his betterment versus Jacksonville just putting him wherever they needed him, right? So I can see him running the ball a little bit more in New Orleans this year. So that's going to be great. So you're going to see him and take that front seat over Alvin Kamara. So that's going to be interesting to see as well.
Yeah, I like that. I agree with that. Now for my number 20, to round out the top 20, I have Bashaw Tootin. And I think people are sleeping on Bashaw. He's competing for the RB1 position with Chris Rodriguez, but he's familiar with the Jacksonville offense. And I think he's going to be the guy. And Rodriguez is legit, not taking anything away from him, but I doubt this is going to be a committee. I think Bashaw is going to be the RB1. The Jags offense should be pretty good this year. And I think he's just going to have plenty of opportunities, which will lead to production. And that's why I have him at number 20.
Okay. I'll talk about him too soon. However, my number 20 to round it off here is actually going to be the second rookie to make the top 20, and that's going to be Mr. Jadarian Price, Seattle Seahawks. So the rookie was drafted to a team that has an absolute need for running back, so there's no one there. I remember early in the offseason they were talking about how Emmanuel Wilson and Roger Holani were taking all these first-team snaps. None of that worried me. It was all smoke and mirrors because this guy was super talented last year. He was killing it in college football, and he's going to continue to kill it no matter where he goes. So, especially in a Seattle offense where they're going to run the ball through him, they actually have the one of the best and easiest schedules for the year. So his is the third friendliest running back schedule for the year, and first half is 10 is the 10th easiest, and then the second half is the eighth easiest. So if you're looking for somebody that's going to give you that really good value, and it's probably only going to get better as the season progresses, I think that's going to be your Jadarian Price there.
Nice. I did not know that about their schedule, and I was pretty high on him too. He's just outside of my top 25, so I'm not going to talk about him, but what you said is true. He's basically one of the three guys I've been looking into where I think his freshman year could be promising in the NFL. Now at number 21, I have a gentleman you were just speaking about, and that's Travis Etienne. Kamara had his time over there, but now Etienne is going to pick up the ball, and he was awesome last year. And he is on a new team. I think there might be some growing pains, but, he is a professional, and the Saints were pretty bad, but this year should be better. I actually like Tyler Shuck, and I think he can be a legit quarterback. And I think that's going to lead to plenty of opportunities for Etienne, despite being on a somewhat bad offense. They're not as good as the Jaguars. I don't think he's going to replicate what he did last year, but I think he's still going to be a solid player, and that's why I have him at 21.
All right. Now, my number 21 is somebody I was high on last year, and when he did get the touches, he was showing it off. The problem is his coaches didn't think so. That's Mr. Trevion Henderson. So they don't have the easiest schedule this year. There's more like, run of the mill, maybe gets a little bit harder, but it's consistently harder throughout the year. I just think that he's finally going to get a chance to probably be the RB1 on that team versus it being Ramondre Stevenson, because, obviously Ramondre has fumbling problems, and I don't think this rookie fumbled at all last year. So, the guy last year in just 180 rush attempts, he already had 900 rushing yards, right? So, and he was only averaging 13 touches per game. You're looking at other guys that are getting 18 to 20 touches a game, and they're averaging 15, 16 points. And this guy's only a couple points behind, and he's getting 5 to 10 less touches. I could see him being somebody that's going to be super productive because he is fresh, kind of similar to the output that Derrick Henry had. He didn't play a lot first year, and then next year he took over whoever was leading him before, and he ended up coming in and having like an amazing career. So, not saying Trevion's the same type of running back. I just think he has the same trajectory as Henry.
Yeah, that's a good point about Henry. He was overlooked for a couple years, and slight change up, like a new team like the Baltimore Ravens, can make all the difference. But yeah, I hope you're right, man, because Trevion's a total beast. I'll talk about him in a minute. But for number 22, I have DeAndre Swift, and he is very difficult for me to evaluate every season, but I like the Bears offense a lot. And I think that's going to lead to plenty of opportunity for him. Monongai might steal some of the goal line work, but they have the ability to easily be a top 10 offense if things go well. And I expect that to be the case. So that's going to clearly lead to some good opportunities for Swift. And I think he's a solid RB2 or a flex for your team.
Yeah, and actually Swift didn't make my top 25 for the reason you listed. Monongai, I think, is going to get a lot more touches this year because that guy was super efficient last year.
He was.
So that unfortunately scares me on
I totally get that too. And I'm usually a DeAndre Swift hater, but I've had him on my team a few times over the years, and he has pleasantly surprised me. So I don't want to doubt him as much this year. Who do you have at 22?
At 22, I have your buddy Bayshil Tootin. So I know I've seen him like going probably sooner than this pick over here sometimes. I think it's a pretty good value for him. He's going to be probably your second. I'd say he's probably your third best running back on your team. You're doing all right. He does have one of the easiest schedules for the second half of the season. So my only concern with him is obviously staying healthy. He's only had his rookie year to play, and it wasn't the greatest last year. He showed some flashes for a couple games, but not anything near consistent enough for me to trust him week in and week out. But I'm definitely going to take a flyer on him. If we're getting him around that round, because you're looking at possibly drafting him around like the 6th, 7th, 8th round.
And who do you have for 23?
For 23, so Quinshawn Judkins. The guy played against stacked boxers last year, and he was still averaging 18 touches per game. He didn't quite get to 1,000 rushing yards. He was at 827, but he did get over 230 carries. He also had, a decent amount of touchdowns, 7, not anything double digits yet. But considering he was on the worst team in the NFL, I'd consider that a win. And he does have a really nice second half of the season schedule, so his playoff schedule would be really good. So if you see somebody draft him and they're struggling with him early, make that offer early, because once he gets to that back half, week number 10 is when he's really going to take off.
Okay. Well, my number 23 is also Quinshawn Judkins. The only thing that concerns me a little bit is the Browns are expected to be horrendous again. And Judkins is coming back from a serious injury. He's a great player, but he's on the Browns, so it may be difficult to rack up yards and touchdowns. I still like him as a top 25, but I don't see things getting much different for the Browns. And I'm not really worried about his injury, because it does sound like he's doing just fine in camp, but that is something that's lingering in the back of my head too. It was a pretty serious injury, so he might not be 100% until, week 4 or 5. And I just hope that the Browns can pick things up a little bit, because like you said, they were dead last year. It was a constant battle between them and the Raiders. And that's the only thing that gives me pause. I feel like that guy could be amazing on a different team. So hopefully they get it together. Now at 24, I have David Montgomery. It sounds to me, just going with my gut and based on things that they've been talking about, that he's probably going to end up being the lead back in Houston. I feel like that should be his role, and I feel like he's going to separate himself clearly as the season progresses and prove that, yeah, I'm the guy that deserves to be here, getting the volume. And it really depends on what Houston decides to do with their backfield, because they have been a committee for the last few years. But I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes as a top 20, because they just decide they're going to lean on him with the run game. I don't think Woody Marks is going to affect him too much. He showed flashes last year and people were really hot and cold on him. But we know that Montgomery's going to get the goal line work. And if he's showing early what he can do and he gets volume and the goal line work, it should be a very productive season.
And you know me, I'm an avid David Montgomery fan, have been for many years. I was telling people about him before he blew up. But unfortunately, this year he did not make my top 25.
I get it. He barely snuck in there for me.
It was close.
Yeah.
I think he ended up being number 26 for me. But actually, my number, we're looking at number 24 right now, right? So number 24 for me, I actually have Bucky Irvin. I faded him a lot more than everybody this year. The reason why I faded him so much, I don't think he's going to have a lesser season than any of the other guys. I just feel there's a lot more uncertainty in that Bucs team. So, for example, he had a blow up last year near the end of the season, like where he was fighting with Tristan Wirfs. Fighting with your superstars is one thing, but when he was healthy, he's only getting 13 touches a game, and they ended up letting obviously the other guy that took most of the touches go, Rashad White. So I could see a situation where Bucky, he's healthy, he could play good, but I don't see the Bucs prioritizing him like that. They seem to run more of a committee type of backfield, and that doesn't justify me getting because last year he averaged 8 points a game, so it was really bad.
Yeah, that back end of the season was tough. I know we both had him on our teams on different leagues, and it was frustrating as hell. Now to round out my top 25, I have TreVeyon Henderson. For all the reasons you mentioned, I feel like he could be the guy there, but he's an amazing player that's stuck on a committee, and the Patriots love Ramondre Stevenson. and he's still their starter on the depth chart. And I think that's how it's going to pan out, at least for the first half of the season. So we may have to wait and see again if Travion takes over. If he becomes the lead back, I expect big things, but it may take some time. That's why I have him as 25. We only got to see a few weeks from him last year as the RB1 when he was getting the ball and he was getting fed while Ramondre was injured. And in my opinion, he proved what he can do and proved that he can be the man in New England. But you know what the Patriots coaching staff decides to do is yet to be seen. And I feel like Ramondre is going to impede a lot again with that production. It's going to take some time for Travion to be the guy. That's why I have him at 25.
You know, and the reason why Ramondre is getting all those touches is because he's probably the ring boy for Diana Rossini and Braden's wedding. Because flinging all that shit. Listen, you know what? That fucking team needs to be freaking investigated, because what the hell?
I don't get it, man.
Once a cheater, always a cheater, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting. They've made some interesting decisions, but they did make it to the Super Bowl last year. So,
yeah, bye. Now my number 25, right? Because you just did your number 25, yep. Right? Okay. So my number 25, round out my total list. It was somebody that I had on my sleeper targets, and somebody that I don't like talking about out loud, but he's somebody that should be on everybody's radar, and that's Rico Dowdle, Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, the guy took Chuba Hubbard's job last year, right? And I mean, when Chuba came back, he still wasn't getting the touches he should have. So Steelers, what they end up doing, they have Jalen Warren still, who's their starter. But I think Rico's eventually going to take that job, because he's just one of those running backs that gets better as the year progresses. And the healthier he is out the gates when the team is struggling, the smoother it's going to be later on. So I could see a situation where he takes over maybe later on in the weeks, like week 5 or 6. And then, he's your workhorse back for the rest of the year. But at the end of the day, Mike McCarthy loves his running backs. And that's his new coach, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, man. You know, as a Steelers fan, I love hearing that. And he's actually 26 for me. And I love Jalen Warren. I think Jalen Warren's a great football player, but I do think Rico is going to take over as the RB1. I just don't know when. And it could be a committee all year. You never know. But yeah, he's my 26, so I was close there too.
Yeah, man, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I think we were pretty close, on the second half of the rankings, right? Everyone starts, but I mean, it's really like in the beginning, there's such a talent level like drop off that you have to be prepared, because by the time you get to like number, I was just looking at this right now here. So by the time you get to your 15th running back, like 14th, 15th, you just ran out of RB1 talent. Yeah. You have guys that could potentially be an RB1, but that means top 15. And by the time you get to the second round, I'd say most of those guys are gone.
Yeah.
So, my whole strategy and what I like to, I've been working on telling people is just always go with best player available. Don't get fixated on one position, but know who your best guys are. And target those guys if you can.
I totally agree. There have been many times where I have different plans. I mean, every draft, you have different plans. It never works out exactly as you plan. But there have been so many times where I'm like, damn, I need a wide receiver and this guy's here, but I cannot pass him up. You just got to draft a better player and make some moves, build your team as the season goes on, but definitely get those top level players on your team.
And if you have a league where people don't trade, you need to get yourself a new freaking
it's half
league,
the fun,
because that is boring. I'm in a couple of those. The only reason I'm in there is because I want to take their money.
Yeah. I mean, you can't argue with that either. But trading is just so fun. I feel like if you're in a team that's stale and people aren't active, it's not nearly as fun as a team that's making trades every week.
But if you're in one of those leagues where they don't trade, you have to be so much more particular about your draft than anywhere else. So you have to draft to the strengths and never fall for the trap, right? When people start having a runoff for a position, you don't panic and get the next best available guy for that position. You get it from the best
That's right.
overall. So don't change from that pattern, and you will have a really successful draft no matter where you're drafting from. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you coming out here again. This is the first episode. We want to keep it short and sweet for y'all. Next episode we're going to be talking about our top 25 wide receivers.
That's right,
Joe?
I got to do some more research before we record that, but a deep talent pool at wide receiver as well, as always.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be fun to talk about it, guys. So, we appreciate you coming out here, spend some time with us. Make sure to hit the likes and the follows, tell your friends about us. This is our 4th year going strong. Fantasy Football Sports Minds. We love you guys, and we'll see you here next week at the same time, same place. Tell your mother, tell your grandmother, tell your brother. We're all going to be here, guys. So you have a good one, all right?